So good afternoon and welcome to Lisa Barnwell Presents Bumps in the Boardroom, a global conversation on the pregnancy advantage for business and looking at the real value of the pregnancy mind. And I'm delighted to welcome a new guest this afternoon. Before I introduce her, I'm just going to give you a little bit of background on Bumps in the Boardroom and just also refer to another book that has been an inspiration for me. Really, the whole concept of Bumps in the Boardroom came about through my sort of 10, 14 years working with women transitioning through pregnancy in and out of the workplace. And there were a number of books last year that I came across that really inspired me to speak up and to start supporting women more vocally who are working and also wanting to be a mother. So today's book actually is Karen Brady's Strong Woman, and I thought it was a fantastic book. And one thing I loved was in the beginning, Karen says that the description that suits her best is working mother, and that's a mother who works. And she states that her work and her children are the most important things in her life. And she says her book signals her commitment to try and encourage, help and champion women from all different walks of life to achieve their potential, and something that I really resonate with both professionally and personally. And she goes on to say that one of her pet hates, which I can agree with, is companies who pay a lot of lip service to wanting more women to soar through the ranks but don't do anything about it. They say they're flexible when helping women combine work and home, but a lot of companies are only flexible when it suits them. These are Karen's words, not mine. But the best companies are those that are diverse, with women with different types of experience and backgrounds and a family, and understand that you need to provide the flexibility and support to succeed, and understand that although they may try, women can't be in two places at once. And she has discovered that what most women want is a job they enjoy that pays enough for them to afford high quality childcare and in which they are respected and they use their talents. Many women have a common aim to fit a career around a family. Yes, we have to juggle and sometimes leave early because our families need us, but that does not... What's happening here? Claire, can you hear two conversations, Gail?
I can hear some background noise, but I could hear you perfectly fine, but I can slightly hear something going on in the background.
It's all fine. I can't hear.
Shall I stop the broadcast?
It's not that. It's okay actually, Lisa. I can't hear anything now.
But it's replaying back what I've just said. I'm not saying anything at the moment, and that's what I've just said.
Has somebody got a live page open?
No, I've not got anything.
Is it me? Have I got a large... No.
Live.
Oh dear. We're really having a techie day today. Shall I start again? Because, or I'm just going to pick it up actually from where we were, because I'm not sure what happened there. That cut into a live. One moment I'm speaking and the next minute it started playing back. So we're on a 60-second delay, so anybody watching live will get a 60-second delay. So essentially I was talking about Karen Brady's quotes in Strong Woman, and that, you know, you can be an ambitious strong woman and also have a career, and that's the essential nuts and bolts of it all. So without further ado, I think I will introduce my lovely guest today, Gail Thomas. So welcome, Gail.
Thank you.
So Gail, you're an entrepreneur and you run your own business and you're setting up a new venture. So rather than me give lots of information, can you give us a little bit of background into what you're up to now and what your backstory is, please?
Yeah, indeed. Well, as you said, I've run a number of businesses. I first started my business 13 years ago, pre-children, and since then have had two who are now 9 and 10. And prior to that, I had a corporate career, so I actually left my corporate career when I decided to set up my business, actually at the height of my career. I joined the board of a national retailer. And since then, I've had involvement in various businesses, and these days I'm involved in a number, but particularly and most pertinently to the topic that we're discussing today is 2to3days.com, which is an online community. We're going to launch it in the autumn, and it is designed to help professional, capable, ambitious mothers to forward their career, return to their career. And by career, I truly mean a career, not necessarily just to downsize or dumb down or change direction to accommodate the children, but to resume an ambition in their career. And it supports them in that quest through a journey or a pathway of support. It starts with confidence and direction and CV and interview techniques and so on, as well as connecting these mothers with enlightened employers who recognise that in actual fact, if you employ such mothers and you give them the flexibility that they need to be the mother that they want to be, then effectively what you get is far more bang for your buck. You effectively get a full-time mind for part-time money, and that's the community that we're aiming to support and connect.
Which is fantastic, and I was so excited to hear about your project. And I know we're getting in, on the ground running really, because you're in the process of setting it all up. But I thought it would be a really fantastic addition to this event, and to learn a little bit more about it. And in previous discussions, we've talked about one of the issues that women face when they're coming back to the workplace is the sort of unflexible hours and trying to do a full-time job in a part-time week. And so being able to not only connect these women with employers who are open to do that, but I think raising the profile of part-time work will be a wonderful thing both for women and employers, because I think there are a lot of companies, certainly in the city with the companies that I work with, who are doing various returnship programs, and that's obviously specifically for their business to come and work for their particular company. But I think just raising the awareness, raising the interest, raising the confidence that these programs are actually really beneficial. And as you say, if you want something done, give it to a working mother, because they're so focused, they're so committed, and they really love their career. They're not doing it just for the fun of it, they're doing it because they're really passionate about it. But also they have deadlines, they need to get out of the door, they want to go and do things with their children and their family. And I think it's a healthier way of working for all of us, whether we've got children or not, to be honest, to start looking at more flexible ways of working. So in my ideal world, it wouldn't just be specifically for mothers that flexible working kind of comes in. It would be for all of us, so that we can, work things around our commitments. But in this particular instance, 2 to 3 days is very much aimed at the senior level woman who wants to have a very satisfying career and look after her family.
That's absolutely right, and I think that, to pick up on some of your points, there are a number of issues, and I absolutely agree with you that flexibility and making work part of life as opposed to a delineated existence, I think it means that people get so much more satisfaction from the work that they do. But the 2 to 3 days community is about mothers being able to share and help each other, as well as get the help and support that they need themselves, because as you know, motherhood is, in spite of the fact that it's a massive market, it is still a unique position to be in. And as a mother, culturally in the corporate world, it's great that corporates have they have new returnships, and they have the expectation that mothers can come back and perhaps negotiate a part-time role that is similar to what they've had before. But I think also what we need to get to is culturally a shift, because what women have to offer, what mothers have to offer, is, as you say, a new set of skills. They have learned how to do so much more with their time and be so much more efficient. That's one thing. But secondly to that, we're missing out on so many skill sets in our economic in our economy as a whole, that we are just not making the most of the skills that we've got. We allow them to leave, we allow them to stay at home with family, instead of giving them the opportunity to combine both. And I think two things: in the corporate world, we miss out a lot, and we end up with a deficit. But a greater part of our economy is the SME sector, and within that there is an educational element which says to them, if you need additional help, then you might want ideally to have a head of marketing or a business development manager or some such, an accountant or whatever, and you might not be able to afford one. But in actual fact, if you were to pay half of that for someone to work 2 to 3 days, you would be giving that flexibility, getting so much more than you expected, because a woman or a mother is restricted by, or she may be restricted by, sports day or the school run, but her brain isn't. You know, she's still thinking about what happened in the workplace, how she can solve that problem, how she can sort out that strategy. And I think we're missing a trick. I think this is an economic movement as well as giving mothers the freedom to be the mother that they want to be, as well as explore their career options.
I totally agree, and I think that's such an interesting point. You know, I think there are so many companies where they don't necessarily need a full-time position. I mean, sometimes they do, but sometimes they don't. And like you say, you're getting somebody of that level, that caliber, that experience, who's bringing all of those skills to the table and the new skills that they've learnt, you know, as a mother. And I think for me, it is about just raising the value of women generally. I mean, I think that's at the essence of what I'm really about, of us really valuing our skills. But as a mother, you know, you've gone through such a period of transition, and I'm very much looking at the value of the pregnancy mind and the changes that happen during pregnancy, the fact that the left brain does slow down, the cognitive functions do become less effective, do become you know, less sort of sharp, because the pregnancy hormones are forcing them to slow down. But the right brain, the creative side, is becoming much more expansive. So the ability to multitask, the ability to be creative, the ability to have the big picture sort of viewpoint is all there, and able to not get so caught up sometimes in the detail. I know just from my own experience of organising this event, sometimes you get very caught up in the smallest little detail, which actually isn't so relevant. And actually, when you're a mother, I think, and when you've been through an experience like pregnancy, your ability to look at things in the big picture is far greater, and you're also looking at the world in a much bigger sense. You know, you're imagining your child being in that world for a number of years, so suddenly your capacity to look ahead, your ability to look much more globally, I think expands as well. So, you know, suddenly you may have been off work for say 6 months on this maternity leave, but you're coming back a hugely grown and diverse person, who I think is a real asset to the workplace. And I think being able to connect with a venture like yours with 2 to 3 days will be an excellent opportunity for a lot of women to really find their feet and move back, if that's what they're looking to do.
Yeah, I think so. I think it gives them the confidence to know that they are, you know, a community where the employers that are engaged with the community are absolutely aware of the pressures and the needs of the mothers within the community, and also to be surrounded by a huge group of experts who can help them to make the best of that return, and to understand, you know, it's, you know, you have changed, you become a mother and things are different. And so, and certainly I think most mothers would agree that the one thing that does disappear is confidence. And I think part of that is because you have developed all of these other skills, and suddenly, kind of a bit like Spider-Man when he gets his Spidey sense, you end up actually being able to see the bigger picture, as you say. You have to really exercise the skills that enable you to think through consequences and actions. You're predicting, you're protecting, you have to think about what might happen so that in that eventuality you have a plan. And so all of those skill sets, I think, and I'm not, you're an expert, I'm not, this is just observation, but I think all of those skill sets become something that actually we need to put to better use, and can be used in a professional direction as well as in a caring direction.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know from just talking to a girlfriend last night, and we were talking about sort of planning and the amount of planning. She's got two small small children, and she's always like 10 steps ahead. And always thinking, okay, have we done this, have we done that? I know from looking after my nephew and nieces, you've got to have eyes in the back of your head, and so you become adept at having extrasensory perception, and just sort of really thinking things through. And I know when I had my own business, well, I have it now, but when I had my own clinic, I had always had a kind of plan A, plan B, and I was always looking at other options. And I think that's something that women naturally have a skill to, but I think it's enhanced greatly once you've gone through the pregnancy and motherhood side. But certainly touching back on what you were saying about the confidence, I know when I was talking to Dr. Victoria Bourne earlier this week, and she was talking about the perception that you have during pregnancy of facial recognition, and how much more sensitive you are and how much more vulnerable you are because your senses are heightened. So if you're working in quite a male-dominated environment, it can actually seem quite aggressive and quite scary, whereas before you would have been, okay, I'm up there with the boys, I'm okay. When you're pregnant, it's actually quite aggressive and it's quite uncomfortable. So you don't have a desire necessarily once you've had your baby to think, oh, I can't wait to run back into that environment, because your feelings are heightened. But actually, building up that confidence, building up that muscle, and recognizing that these are changes that actually last for around 3 months before your birth and about 3 months after, and then gradually sort of peter out or subside. Allowing you to go back into that environment. But I think if we can allow working environments to become more female orientated and a better balance, then we wouldn't have that same level of aggression, we wouldn't have that same level of testosterone. Really, it's when you get all of one particular group together, it's always going to be a really powerful group. But I think when you mix it up and you have a good blend and you include male and women, men and women, then it's got a much more diverse sort of flavour to it, and brings together everybody's best skills. That's certainly what I've always learned when I'm doing blending. So
I absolutely agree. I think you have to play to strengths. I think that's a really crucial part of certainly any business success, and actually similarly, I suppose, at home. But for sure, men, certainly when we're talking to people through the progress and process of setting this business up, men they do get it, and they are very pro having mothers back into the workplace and to give them what they need. I think and we also need to educate the businesses as well, and there will be content, there'll be lots of content, hugely content-rich community in 2to3days.com, and part of that content will be directed at the employers in how best to manage these mothers as they come to them and as they come to work for them, because it's all very well spending your money as an employer on an advert, recruiting a mother who comes, she's highly skilled, she's highly capable, but if you repeatedly invite her to a meeting at 5:30, for example, in the end she's going to get demoralised and not really feel like she fits in. So there is an element of education for the businesses as well in managing these mothers and knowing and understanding their pressures, which is almost like a double barrier. Men might understand it as a father to a certain extent, but they're not necessarily the ones that have to deal with the consequences of being a mother and having the pressure. I don't want to call it a pressure because it's a pleasure, but the fact that you have that conflict in your diary with the sports day or the school play or the school run, or a sickness day of a child or whatever it might be, then that understanding has to exist in the workplace as well, and within the culture of the organisation.
So 2 to 3 days is going to be coming live sort of in the autumn. So what are you busy doing at the moment? I know when we sort of spoke before, you mentioned about having conversations with various sort of enlightened employers and building up your database, but it sounds like things are almost up and running a bit already behind the scenes.
That has been the really lovely thing about it, is that yes, indeed, what we're doing, there are 3 aspects to the community. There are obviously the employers, there are also the mothers, and then there is also the support directory, the people who the mothers can draw upon to help them in their return to work or in their next job, if that's what they're aiming to do. And the response has just been amazing. It really has, really encouraging, to the extent that we've already had employers approach us and ask us, even without a website that is live yet, to connect them with mothers who might want to work. We've already placed a number of mothers in positions. We've still got jobs now that we need to get out to the community. So we're building relationships with those community. We're keen and eager to hear from mothers who are interested in joining this membership. We're interested in hearing from employers who are thinking about employing either a job share or part-time, or just open to the discussion around the possibility and what it might mean for them and their business. And we're also looking to connect with people who are part of that support network that can help women in their quest to enjoy a career as a mother. And the response has been amazing. We've got some large household names who are really excited about the project. We've got small and medium enterprises who are ready with their jobs already to advertise. And we've got an awful lot of very engaged mothers. So it's really encouraging.
Yeah, so it sounds like it's really sort of right place, right time, and it's really sort of hitting the mark, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, from the conversations I've been having, you know, more and more women do want to work and have a family, you know, and combine the two and find a healthy way of doing that. And I think, you know, as we touched on at the beginning, having a life that includes work, I think is the thing, as opposed to it being all encompassing and completely taking over. You know, and we've had people like Arianna Huffington speaking out and saying, you know, it is important to focus on wellness. You know, her book Thrive talks about the third metric and how important it is to be, you know, healthy and look after your well-being and being mindful, as well as focusing on, you know, the success and the power and the money, which have traditionally been our metrics of success. So I think we're, you know, as a society, we're realizing actually, you know, in order to bring our best self to the boardroom table, we actually need to also, you know, feed ourselves in other ways, and that isn't always just fully at work. So having time to nurture those other parts of ourselves, be it being a mother or whatever, is really important. But I think when you've got that support, when you've got that level of understanding, and you're treated as a human being and as an individual with desires and hobbies and wants, you know, the employer's going to get a far better, far grounded, far more enthusiastic, loyal employee. You know, so for me, it makes perfect sense, you know, to have something like this, and I think it's well overdue.
Yes, I agree. I think it is well overdue. And I think, you know, going back to the metrics that you talked about, you know, they are very traditional and almost male-orientated metrics, whereas I feel, as you say, there are many benefits to having mothers in the workplace and able to be ambitious, you know, not to have to just go to work to get out of the house, but actually to have something in it for themselves. And it's a mindset which can be difficult to get back into when you've had children and you're not necessarily intending to go back to work. And then when you start on that return to work journey, then you have that need to build up that confidence and that identity again. And if you can do that through having a career that makes use of all of the old and the new skills that you've got in a professional capacity, it enables you to start to feel better and more well and more motivated and more satisfied. It's also great for the children to see that, to see a mother who is actually still doing it, still,
yeah,
know,
stimulated and fulfilled. I think that's really important.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, everybody, for me, it's about everyone having an informed choice. And if the choice is there and you choose not to take it, that's absolutely fine. But having the choice so you can make it work in different ways. And I think, you know, I've got some female entrepreneurs on the call later this week who are you know, who've completely thrown away the rule book and are doing it differently to make it work for them around their families. And I know with my conversation yesterday with Geraldine Gallagher of Executive Coaching, she shared her VAST model that she's talking to a lot of the corporates about. And the T at the end of that, it's the V is for vigilance, the A is for appreciate, S is for separation, and the T is for trial. And she said at the end, when people come back to work, you know, it's as much the employer being on trial as the individual. The individual often feels when they come back into the workplace, you know, they're on trial, they're being looked at to see, well, can they still perform as a working mother? And my speaker this morning, Catherine Parks from 3M, said she put herself under enormous pressure to perform when she came back, and actually she was doing brilliantly, and she didn't need to be staying in the office as much as she was, but she felt this sense of pressure that she put on herself. But equally, you know, women are looking at their environment, and it's a really key time. So even though the numbers are going up for women coming back to work, it's about having them stay at work, having them stay longer term in their positions, because if they come back into the workplace and then find, actually, you know, I'm going off to have another baby and actually this really doesn't work for me, the flexibility is just not enough, I'm not being valued, I'm not being appreciated, it's just not going to work. So we've got to really understand what are the desires of these women, what are the needs of these women. So I imagine that's all the conversations you're having with the employers at the moment.
It is. I mean, but it's also around the need for. So you mentioned in your introduction about Karen Brady and the fact that women want to be employed and to earn enough to afford good childcare. There's an element of childcare, but there's also an element of, you know, why shouldn't we be there for the school runs if we want to? Why can't we do our 2 to 3 days, maybe across 5 or whatever it is that flexibly suits us? And I think all of that will come when we have the employer's understanding that it doesn't compromise on the work that is done. And I think I read in some book, it was the description was FaceTime, i.e. the time that you have to actually be in the office doesn't necessarily represent a level of production that you might expect. So productivity isn't about the number of hours that you sit at someone else's desk. It's about what you do while you're there. And I think until we start to value that, then it's going to be tricky for these employers to understand it. But there's no doubt about it, as you said, the time is right. We very much feel like we're pushing at an open door in a lot of instances, and people do get it. And what's more, people recognise that this is a method of filling gaps that exist, of solving problems that already exist, actually because that flexibility is there and is required. It's a bit like 0 hours contracts. You know, they've had an awful lot of bad press from the point of view that they allow, you know, the sort of less moralistic employers to exploit them. But equally, for certain people, they represent a freedom around their working life that they haven't necessarily been able to enjoy. So it's about taking the positives and really making the most of that.
And I think, as you know, as a society, we are pushing the boundaries more. We do want to be more free. I mean, you know, you look at where we're going for our holiday destinations now. We're all up for more adventure. We're all up for, you know, not everybody, but you know, a lot of us are wanting to just sort of be more flexible and have things done differently. I think of my grandparents. You know, my grandfather had one job in one firm where he stayed for many, many years. You know, was incredibly loyal, and that sort of job for life mentality, but also existence, isn't really there now. And I remember, you know, before I'd got to sort of my mid-20s, I'd already had, I think, 3 or 4 jobs. But I loved it. You know, it gave me a lot of experience. It was showing me what I wanted as much as what I didn't. And I was learning great skills. So I think we're doing things very differently now. And technology, you know, is allowing us to do things differently as well. And I think the culture of sort of presenteeism, where, you know, it is about having, you know, your bums on seats, basically. You know, is not a healthy way of working. And you know, I know when I worked in hotels initially, and we always had like a clocking, well, we had a clocking in, and I hated it, you know, because I knew I was getting my work done, but then you'd all have to sit there and wait until the clock got to a certain time before you were allowed to leave. And it just didn't work for me at all. And, you know, I'm somebody who can very much work to deadlines, very much be motivated when I need to be. And I don't think I'm, you know, unique in that. I think many people have that ability. And it's almost trusting your employees to do that and allowing that and giving them the scope to find the way that works for them, male and female. Because I think, you know, as I said in the call this morning, until we're given more flexibility for men as well, it doesn't take, you know, the pressure off on women will stay. But if there's the man is able to go and do the school pickups as well, or is able to go and pick up a sick child or whatever, then you've got more flexibility. So for me, it's about looking at it from both perspectives as well, and not just focusing on women having flexible roles, but men having much more flexible roles as well.
No, I absolutely agree with that, and certainly in our 2 to 3 days quest, we're absolutely covering that, not just for men, but also for older people and their requirement to not necessarily retire if they don't want to, and to think about returning to work. So that's a bit of a watch this space one. But just returning to your point as well about the fact that within employment, and in particular within corporate employment, that we need this cultural shift to embrace, welcome and value flexibility for all. What we've seen as a consequence of that is this huge rise in mumpreneurs, in mothers and women who are setting up their own businesses, which is, I think, to your point about creativity, really capitalising on that, that ability to think creatively, to think of a solution that fits in with the lifestyle that they need and want, means that they can set up their businesses and run them according to their motherhood schedule. And I think hopefully the more and more success that we see in that area, that will feed into the choices that mothers can have, whether they decide to be employed or self-employed. It means that it assists in that valuing of what mothers can contribute to the economy and to business as a whole, if they're just allowed the flexibility that they need and want.
And I mean, what's interesting for me is a lot of the mumpreneurs that I know actually do then join together in a community. I'm a part of, you know, a lot of online communities. That's how we met. You know, so it's interesting that even though women kind of step out to do their own thing, they then kind of step back in to actually have a community. I don't think women like working completely on their own. You know, we work much better as a group and sharing ideas and pulling things together. So I think although there are many women going off and doing that, I think there's huge potential for employers, big corporations, to really, you know, understand this and get behind it. And it's not to say they're not doing this already. I know that the employers I've been talking to are definitely looking at it. You know, this isn't, you know, gosh, shock, I've never heard of this before. But I think, you know, there's still work to be done. And, you know, they can learn a lot from what is happening in the online communities, what is happening with the mumpreneurs, the female entrepreneurs who are sort of stepping out and doing things. And what I've seen particularly in my research into the pregnant mind is just how creative, just how, as I say, going back to the big picture side of things, powerfully open women can be. And actually for a company who's trying to expand, to grow, to capitalize on new markets, to look at new ways of doing things, to have better ways of conflict resolution, better man management, I mean, these are all things that women, particularly when they've gone through that period, you know, have in spades, because it's just opened up to them very naturally. And I feel that actually if we can nurture that time, if we can give that a bit more space and really embrace it, then actually that will be of real benefit to employers as well. And I'm really trying to encourage my clients, certainly, and women I speak to step back a little bit sooner and not to push right until the end, but to allow that space and that creative shift to happen, and to allow the transition of the brain patterns to come to fruition, as it were, to give them the space. Because then what you tend to find is postnatally the sort of journey back is far quicker and far more effective. But when you're trying to hold on to everything and work up until your last moment, and not almost accept that you are pregnant and embrace that side of things, and that's come up with my speakers and my clients, you know, it doesn't do anybody any favors. It doesn't do the employer any favors, or the individual. So that's something as well, you know, where we're actually almost, you know, looking at shifting down to a part-time role before you go on to maternity leave, I think could be a really beneficial thing. And I know lots of companies have different flexible sort of processes around that, but I think there's a lot more that could be done, because the women I know certainly say to me, you know, they often check out really mentally around sort of 6-7 months, and the statistics and the research that Victoria has done confirms that. It's not a lack of interest, but it's just the brain is changing, you know, in order to allow the intuitive, creative, sort of instinctive side to come forth. So, you know, I think that's another time when we can really embrace more flexibility, more part-time work, and the same with the transition back to the workplace.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I mean, I'm an employer myself. You know, I have people and have had mothers leave and go on maternity leave and come back, and I've always been hugely in favour of big support, naturally, of those kind of people. However, I think it just makes commercial sense for employers to start thinking about this sooner rather than later. And the more that, as part of her career progression, a pregnant mother can be helped into thinking about how she will return, in what capacity, what strengths, what flexibility she might need, is just, you know, that's just enlightened. It just makes so much sense, not just from the point of view of employee welfare, but also because it makes commercial sense. A business who is looking at this and planning for it is going to get so much more out of it if they have invested prior to the birth and in readiness for the return after it. But I think we end up with this almost, I don't know, it's almost like a demarcation line, pre and post birth, rather than planning for one before the other happens, and just making sure that everybody knows where they stand. And have those open discussions, instead of it being almost a taboo or politically incorrect to ask. Let's have an open discussion, because we want to welcome the mother back into the workplace, as opposed to being terrified about infringing on her choices.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know with my conversation this morning with Catherine at 3M, you know, they're looking at programs to engage, you know, the younger employees. They're sort of 20-somethings and, you know, early 30s, but who have not yet sort of perhaps even met their partner to go on and have children, but are thinking about their career progression and how it can go. And Catherine talked about her own experience where she held back from actually sort of talking to her employers about her pregnancy, and actually it didn't allow such a smooth process. And another speaker I had, Tracy Alford from Shell, said actually she was completely the opposite. She engaged, well, she held it back for a while. She held it back for about until she was about 5 or 6 months, which I guess is quite a long time. But once she did start the dialogue, it was a very open dialogue, and that was her key point, to say to women, start the dialogue early, start it way before. And I know this was something that I picked up when I read Sheryl Sandberg's book, Lean In, you know, and it's about, we kind of almost check out too soon, and we hold ourselves back from moving up the career ladder because we believe certain positions may not work for us when we want to have a family, rather than actually just engaging in conversations and saying what we would love to have, and then seeing if there's a way to make that possible. You know, we're all busy making our own assumptions and making our own decisions in our own heads. And actually, if we just started having more open conversations, you know, we may find that actually things could be very different. And that was one of the reasons why I wanted to have this event, just to start some conversations. And my hope is that I can continue this. I've got a number of employees who've said, you know, we're open to having dialogue with you. We're open to having conversations to actually look at how we can move forward with this.
Yeah, I think it's really encouraging, because I do think there is the fact that there isn't an awful lot of conversation about it. That means that culturally the expectation is, well, I'm about to have a baby, therefore I'm going to be a different person, and I'll deal with that different person when the time comes, as opposed to planning a much smoother journey through the whole thing, and in the return to work. And it comes from that confidence and that value of, and it's really nice to hear you talking so much more positively about baby brain. You know, it's recognized almost as a negative thing as opposed to a positive
which I'm totally
thing.
against. Yeah.
Which is so the expectation, even from a lot of this has got to come from the mothers as well. Even the expectation is that, oh, it's baby brain. We've got to start thinking positively about what this means and what it gives to us, and how it can be used to best effect, both in the home and also at work. And I think we as mothers also, big feature of becoming a mother, I think, and again this is much more sort of a personal observation, is this huge guilt factor, which turns up, and the guilt of potentially returning to work, or even thinking about myself instead of thinking of myself as a mother, or my appendages that are now my children. I think if we can expect and start to acknowledge that this is what we are almost two people. We are a mother, and we are this professional, or a managerial, or an entrepreneur, or whatever it is, as the person, as the woman. We are also a mother, and the more that they actually blend together, the better, the more fulfilled we are, the more we've got to give, the more we can take our experiences with one and apply them positively in the other. As you said, man management, for example, and it might sound trite, but the man management, the all of the skill sets that you employ when your children start to grow up, and how they deal with other people, also actually applies to yourself in the workplace. So there is
amazing. Sorry to jump in. I've learned amazing negotiation skills looking after my nieces and nephew. Yeah. I mean, crikey, if you can negotiate with little children, your skills to negotiate elsewhere are it's a piece of cake, to be honest. And I think, although we sort of laugh about it, those are real skills, that we find.
I think also that, there's a 7-year-old in all of us, isn't there? And at times we act like that. And I think if you can manage them, then you've got something to give. But my point as well is that mums and themselves have to value themselves for what they can give, and recognizing that transferability of skills is a huge plus. And I think once you're comfortable with being a mother, and certainly for me, I kind of got to a point where I made peace with myself. I decided I am not going to feel the pressure anymore, because I think we're very capable also as mother to mother in a peer group, being competitive and having unreal expectations of each other, and being a super mum or a domestic goddess or whatever it might be. I think equally we have to value ourselves in the contribution that we make, instead of thinking negatively about or judgmentally about other people and how they manage their lives. It's difficult enough, and if we can just be much more supportive and positive, then I think that will spill out into the wider world, and we'll get the support and the flexibility that we need, both as entrepreneurs, or as stay-at-home mums, or as professionals seeking to be employed. And certainly for me, my whole life is geared up around my family. Naturally, things have to flex and change, but I'm so much more fulfilled in both of my roles, as a mother and also as a business person, because of that. I'm much more able to be at peace with myself, comfortable in all that I do. That has ramifications on the children. They're much more relaxed and comfortable, and it has ramifications in the people that I deal with at work, because I'm much more relaxed and comfortable.
Yeah, exactly. And this was something that I definitely took from Karen Brady's book, where she talked very openly about being sort of a career woman and a mother, and, giving herself permission to be ambitious, really, and to follow her desires and follow her dreams. And I think that's the thing. I definitely feel that when I'm fulfilled at work, when I'm satisfied there, all my other relationships are so much better. And I think it makes such a difference when we're trying to just have a part of our personality focused on, and the other areas aren't looked after, it doesn't work. And as a therapist, you know, first and foremost, I'm all about the holistic approach, and looking at, you know, looking after ourselves in all ways. So I think it's very important to balance our sort of our heart's desires with our commitments and with our sort of mental challenges, and really sort of bringing it all together.
Absolutely, and not to be thought lesser of because of it. I think that's the key thing in all of this, is that there is so much contribution to be made, and just because I'm a mother or they're a mother or she's a mother, it doesn't make them any less able to contribute to the wider economic strength of our country. I think, you know, there's so much there that we've got to give, and the more that is valued, then naturally that the ability and the desire to give the flexibility at work and to give the acknowledgement that this mother also has another role at home is really, really important. And as you say, you know, that spills beyond mothers. That just is generally, it's, you know, it makes good sense.
Yeah, definitely. And the more happy we are, you know, the more fulfilled we are, the more we give that off to everybody else. So, you know, as a society, as a world, you know, we generally are radiating more sunshine. You know, it's a much nicer place to be. And I think you know, for me, changing the negative connotations around the pregnancy brain was, you know, also at the heart of what I was hoping to do this week, because, you know, the evidence is there to say that it's great benefits that actually happen during the changes, and we've always perceived them as negatives because we you know, tend to value logic, we value learned education, we value you know, pieces of information that we can store and recollect very highly, whereas actually you know, creativity and sort of intuition and inner wisdom is not given quite such a high regard. And I think that is shifting as well. I think, you know, on a recent interview with Ariana Huffington, she talked about connecting in with her inner essence and listening to her inner voice, her inner wisdom. And she's an incredibly successful, powerful woman who's very, very smart. And she said, you know, but I have a lot of the voices within me. And I think that's something as well, to trust that, you know, as women, we're given this beautiful gift. I mean, men and women have intuition and have the ability to be creative and to connect in, but I think women particularly have that ability to do it whilst they're doing many other things as well. And when we don't listen to those inner voices and we suppress them and focus on what we think we should be doing, you know, what society thinks we should be doing, you know, at the end of the day, it doesn't make anybody happy. So I don't think it's a long-term solution for success, for sure.
No, I agree entirely. I think we have to broaden the values that those things that we value in the workplace and beyond, and we have to expand what that might mean and contribute to the workplace and to the business as a whole.
So if people, Gail, want to get in touch with you and find out more about 2 to 3 days, whether it's an employer or employee or somebody with the services to support that transitional period or that period, how can they get in touch with you?
Well, there is a holding page at www.2to3days.com, and if anyone would like to contact me directly, my email is Gail, Gail, at 2to3days.com, and I'd love to hear from anyone who feels in support of what this community is about. As you say, a mother, an employer, or part of the support community. It would be great to hear from all. We're also looking to speak to as many people as possible about their experiences of working part-time, obviously particularly as a mother and at a professional level or a senior level. If anyone has any experiences of that, it's always useful to hear about their experience, how they found it, what they want to do next. You know, it's really helpful just to have as much information as possible so that we can truly produce a community that really, really helps everybody to understand and make the most of this huge resource.
Yeah, exactly. So that you've got happy employers and unhappy employees. I think that's the, that's the key. It's about getting both parties to a winning level. So
Yes.
great, fantastic. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure having a conversation with you, and I'm so excited about your project. I'm going to watch it with interest and follow your progress, because it's a great venture, and I wish you every success with it.
That's really lovely. Thank you very much. It's been a delight to be here. Thank you, Lisa.
My pleasure. Take care. Thank you.
Thank you.